Come one, come all, welcome to Tier 3 of Nort's new Vegas Iceberg. Last week, we covered a ton of cut content in the obscure tier. Now, however, we've reached Tier 3 and what I like to call the conspiracy tier. While not every entry is related to a New Vegas fan theory, many entries today feature some sort of conspiracy or fan theory. Without further ado, let's begin. The Courier is the lone wanderer. I feel as though every franchise that has multiple protagonists will eventually come upon a theory like this one. This theory states that the Courier, the protagonist from New Vegas, is the same person as the lone wanderer from Fallout 3. While it's not a very popular theory among many fans, there are a few that buy into this headcanon theory. However, I hate to be a sour Sally, but with what we know of both characters, it would actually be impossible for the two characters to be the same. For starters, the first ending of Fallout 3, prior to the release of Broken Steel, saw the sacrifice of the Lone Wanderer, trading their own life for the waters of life for the Capital Wasteland. But even if the events of Broken Steel were to occur, and the Lone Wanderer were to survive their encounter at Project Purity, it still wouldn't make sense. Contrary to popular belief, the Courier isn't some amnesic blank slate mailman. Just from playing the game and encountering certain NPCs, the story of the Courier prior to New Vegas is presented to the player. In conversations with Ulysses, we learn that the Courier was an avid adventurer in the Western Wasteland, going to places like Circle Junction, New Reno, Vault City, Fort Abandon, and traveling the Big Circle. Conversations with Little Buster reveal that the Courier was once a bounty hunter. The Courier may have knowledge of the Brotherhood of Steel prior to their encounter with Veronica. The Courier may also have a child somewhere in Montana. Now yes, while many of these pieces of information are conditional on the player selecting the dialogue options, the point is that the Courier is already well established in the West. It would be nigh impossible for the Courier to save the Capital Wasteland in 2277, then go west, do all these things, remove their Pip-Boy, and then do all the things mentioned in New Vegas. So while the Courier and Lone Wanderer being the same person makes for an interesting fan theory, it just doesn't make all too much sense. Besides, I like having different protagonists. You never met the real Legot. Now that I've just dunked on one theory, let's give you a chance to dunk on one of my favorite theories. I've mentioned this theory quite a few times before, even making a dedicated short for it. Legot Lanius is Caesar's second in command of the Legion. He's a fearsome and deadly warrior raised in the art of war since birth. He is a menacing combatant, decimating members of his own tribe as a young boy after they surrendered to the Legion. He is a great leader, rebuilding the Legion into a strong army following their initial defeat at the Hoover Dam in 2277. He is a victorious veteran, conquering 19 tribes in the name of the Legion, with plans of making the NCR his 20th. And with all that being said, I believe that the Legot you face at the climax of New Vegas isn't actually the real Legot Lanius. Here's why. I think the biggest piece of evidence are the inconsistencies in his backstory. The tale Caesar tells, the one where Lanius attacked his own tribe in a fit of rage after they surrendered to the Legion, is different from Lucius's tale, where Lanius was born into the Legion as a slave, becoming a legionary at the age of 12. And on top of all that, when asked, former Legot Joshua Graham states that he's never even met Legot Lanius, despite Graham's exile from the Legion happening like 4 years before the events of New Vegas. These inconsistencies are just a tad weird. But there's more. Lanius, the fiercest warrior the Legion has ever met, known for being a merciless and ruthless living weapon, can be talked out of combat and into forfeiting the second battle of the Hoover Dam. While sure, it can be said that the Courier is a legend themselves, and with 100 speech could convince anyone of anything, one would have to imagine that a being known for their violent nature wouldn't back down after being given a reasonable argument. I don't know, maybe I don't understand the Legot all too well, but I stand by it. It's a weird ending. And lastly, from a technical side of things, it's mentioned that the Legot wears a mask to hide his disfigured and scarred face. However, upon removing his helmet with console commands, his face bears no such scarring. And while this is likely just because we're never supposed to see the Legot without his helmet, I think it's a neat little bit of proof that backs this theory. Again, go ahead and tear this theory apart if you'd like, just know that it is likely my favorite New Vegas theory, and it'll hurt my feelings if you go on to disprove it. The NCR-CF riot was staged. Here's a theory that I haven't seen mentioned all too much around the internet and forums. The NCR Correctional Facility, or NCR-CF, was a high-security prison and labor camp for criminals of the Republic. Those incarcerated would be tasked with, under supervision, maintaining a railway along the Long 15. This work would be important for keeping trade open between New Vegas and the rest of the West. However, at some point shortly prior to the start of New Vegas, a significant prison escape would occur, leading to the formation of a raider group known as the Powder Gangers. The Powder Gangers would use the dynamite given to them for maintaining the railway to commit banditry and the likes. This prison raid would cut off a significant supply line for the NCR, worsening the Republic's struggling Mojave campaign. But what if this raid wasn't a coincidence, but rather intentionally staged by a third party? Say a party with an interest in stopping the efforts of the NCR, say Caesar's Legion, or maybe even Chief Hanlon. That's what this theory posits anyway. While there may not be anything concrete in-game proving this, we do know that Caesar's Frumentary, their spies, can be found disguised across the Mojave. Whether they're hidden in the ranks of the NCR, or posing as a gambler on the Strip, these spies are dedicated to their cover stories. Would it be so far-fetched that Caesar ordered one of his spies to pose as a prisoner and advocate for a raid? I don't think so. In another vein, we learn through the Return to Sender quest that NCR Ranger Chief Hanlon is not so keen on taking part in the NCR's Mojave campaign. So much so that the veteran Ranger Chief has resorted to committing treason by falsifying field reports. And while the events of Return to Sender only occur because Hanlon's plot was starting to unravel, what if a secret second plot remained a secret? What if Hanlon, through maybe ordering the reassignment of prison guards, intentionally left the prison understaffed, leading to the opportunity for prisoners to take over? Sure, while both theories are a bit far-fetched, in that there is no concrete in-game evidence of the NCR-CF riot being staged, there is some precedent for both Caesar's Legion and Hanlon to be involved in the deception of the Republic. I think it's a cool theory. Chosen One car crash. We touched on this one a bit before with the No Bark Noonan is the Chosen One theory, but this theory, instead of claiming that the Fallout 2's protagonist is alive and well, living out their days in Novak, it claims that the Chosen One actually perished in the Mojave. Found northwest of the Snyder Prospector Camp is a scorched highwayman crashed in a mud crack. This theory claims that it is this highwayman crash that killed the Chosen One. And while ordinarily a theory like this could be easily whisked away as a coincidence, its primary proof can be heard if your music volume is up. Upon finding the wrecked highwayman, the song Gold Slouch from the Fallout 2 soundtrack begins to play. Gold Slouch would play when the player was in the town of Redding, a prominent city in Fallout 2. Another bit of evidence that this post-war car once belonged to Arroyo's savior can be found in the trunk. In the footlocker, one can find microfusion cells and energy cells. These could potentially refer to the arguably best weapons in Fallout 2, the Pulse Rifle and Gauss Rifle. So while the Chosen One managed to save their village, befriend some helpful companions, and stop the Enclave, it would seem that a slight mishap behind the wheel is what did them in. Todd paid Metacritic. Here's one that's more of a conspiracy than a theory. And as much as I hate sounding like a Bethesda apologist or taking part in any sort of Bethesda v Obsidian discourse, this theory is one that is false. So, as part of Obsidian's developer agreement that allowed them to make a Fallout game, Fallout New Vegas, there was a stipulation that one would see Obsidian get a $1 million bonus in the event New Vegas got an aggregate score of 85 on the rating website Metacritic. Well, New Vegas was made, released, and rated. The console releases ended up with a score of 82, and the PC release had a score of 84, 1 point shy of the bonus. While many critic reviews were indeed positive, being 80 or above, the general consensus was that the game was indeed fun, however it felt too much like Fallout 3, but Western, and was quite unstable, being very buggy. People needed to alter config files in order to even get the game to run properly. It was a brutal time. And while these game-breaking bugs were patched out within a month, the reviews were set. Damage done. We can even find old reviews that mention just how buggy the game was. At the time of release, this news about a bonus wasn't public knowledge. It only became news after Chris Avellone made folks aware of it in a tweet responding to news of layoffs at Obsidian. This was in reference to Obsidian Entertainment having to lay off 20 to 30 people in 2012 after Microsoft Studios canceled a game that Obsidian was working on. Obviously, the bonus from New Vegas would have helped Obsidian keep these folks employed, but who actually knows what was going on behind the scenes? Later, when hating on Bethesda became a popular thing to do in the mid-2010s, theories and speculation about how Bethesda sabotaged the game's rating started to emerge. You see, Bethesda, as the owner of the Fallout IP, were in charge of publishing the game. They would oversee Obsidian's development, set deadlines, and take part in bug testing and quality assurance. As such, many folks blamed Bethesda for the woes of the game, stating that Obsidian had little opportunity to polish it. Excuses like they were forced to use the Gamebryo engine, an engine that was responsible for countless bugs in Oblivion and Fallout 3, and they only gave an 18-month development time and refused to delay the release or spend more on bug testing. There was a common belief that Bethesda had set up Obsidian in the worst possible scenario in order to not pay out the $1 million bonus. What these people don't understand, it seems, is how contracts actually work. Two parties talk and agree upon things that need to be done. If one party needs more time to get a job done or doesn't like the agreed upon rules of the contract, then that party should have negotiated a better contract or not signed at all. I apologize if this sounds a bit too ranty. Anyway, while the rest of the gaming world took shots at Bethesda, it would be two New Vegas developers that would not, instead looking inwards and taking responsibility for New Vegas's shoddy release and Metacritic score. In 2018, Avellone tweeted out, "Bethesda did not treat us badly at all. Even the Metacritic thing was something they added, not threatened us with. And if we'd been better with fixing bugs, we could have hit the score needed to prevent layoffs. But nope, Fallout New Vegas, when it was released, had a lot of bugs." Sawyer agreed, stating that initially the New Vegas contract had no royalties, and the bonus was just that, a bonus. Furthermore, a TechRaptor interview with Avellone tried to clear some things up surrounding his initial tweet about the bonus. When asked if he thinks Bethesda manipulated the rating in any way, Chris replied, "I don't believe they did at all. It was our responsibility to do more to make the game better, but the people making the decisions on game quality kept getting distracted by shiny objects. It was Obsidian's fault, and as Ferg said, Bethesda didn't even have to offer that in the contract at all. It was up to us to manage it into a successful quality completion, and we didn't succeed at that. Good people lost their jobs because of that." He also further elaborated the meaning behind his initial tweet about the bonus. It is widely believed that when the statement was released, that it was blaming Bethesda. It wasn't. It was recognizing that we as a studio should have done better, and even a little bit better, 1%, could have had huge benefits, and we could have kept people we had to let go. My feelings then are the same as my feelings now, and I stand by that. It's an unpopular stance, The anti-underdog stance is usually compared to the underdog needing a little more training montage moments, but I believe it's the correct one. Bethesda was trying to encourage us to do a quality job, they didn't have to, and we missed the mark, but within the realm where it was clear that we could have fixed it. So, to summarize, Bethesda offered a bonus as a bonus. Obsidian could have done more to get said bonus. Neither company hates the other. Publicly, there is no bad blood. And honestly, think about it from Bethesda's point of view. Why on earth would a company, one whose goal is to make a lot of money, intentionally sabotage a chance at making a lot of money? It just doesn't make much sense. To end this long rant, I'll leave you with a relevant quote from Reddit user Saint Vanilla. I got an 89 in my math class and got a B. That's how it goes. Reload dashing. Speaking of bugs, fans of Jabbo or Tomato or anyone in the speedrunning sphere have probably heard of this speedy glitch. Reload dashing is a glitch that allows players to fling themselves across the wasteland at an alarming rate. To perform a reload dash, all you need are three things: a single-shot manual loading weapon, like the 357 or Cowboy Repeater, one ammo type that fits the weapon, and a second ammo type that is different from the first. If you bring up the gun, move in a chosen direction, swap ammo with a hotkey, and bring up the Pip-Boy, then unequip the gun and lower the Pip-Boy, all while holding the movement key, you will begin your flight. It definitely sounds like a lot, and maybe it is, but luckily the folks over at speedrun.com have broken it down into a set of keybinds: 2, 2, F2 up, enter tab, all while holding W. Behold the reload dash. Reload dashing works by abusing the reload animation for single-shot manual loading weapons. This reloading animation actually forces a slight movement at the end, and when the player unequips their weapon during the reload and holds their movement key, the game ends up adding a bunch of extra speed while doing the reload's forced movement. Does that make sense? I don't know. Does New Vegas run on the Gamebryo engine? Yes, and that's all the sense that we need. Who needs vehicles in Fallout when you can be your own car? The Kings aren't impersonating Elvis. This is more of a technicality than anything, but it's something that many, myself included, may have glossed over or have not thought about. The Kings are a post-war faction operating out of the King's School of Impersonation in Freeside. The group came to be during Mr. House's rise to power over the Strip. While House was forming an agreement with three tribal factions in the form of the Three Families, one tribe on the outskirts of the Strip would not submit to House's reign. A young scavenger from this tribe would manage to discover a building that seemingly worshipped an ancient deity known for their style and singing. They worshipped the king. The scavenger, by some divine intervention or otherwise, would take on the name and appearance of the king, inspiring his tribe to do the same. Thus, the Kings were born. Now, while we of course know that the king refers to the famed musician Elvis Presley, this is actually unknown to the Kings. They don't know who Elvis is. They only know the king. The king himself says as much. When asked by the Courier if this was a school, what was taught here, the king replies, as far as we can tell, the guy that built this place was considered the coolest of cool, and taught other people how to be more like him. The king and his tribe mates have no clue who Elvis Presley actually is. Is this some hidden deep lore within New Vegas? No, but it does make for a neat bit of trivia. The Kings aren't technically impersonating Elvis. They're impersonating a caricature of Elvis, the king. Sawyer Mod. This started as a conspiracy and theory tier, but it seems to have quickly evolved into a bug and glitch tier. A year and a bit following the release of New Vegas, on December 29, 2011, lead game designer Joshua Sawyer put out a personal mod of his that altered the game. This was known as the Sawyer Mod. The Sawyer Mod would change the game, making it a more challenging one, while also fixing and tweaking some technical problems and bugs. When asked why he made such a mod, Sawyer noted that there were a variety of bug fixes and balance modifications that I either didn't have time to do or was unable to do so because we ran out of time. Fallout New Vegas' overall balance also errs toward being quite easy across the board, in part because Fallout 3 is quite easy, and I didn't want to completely alienate the audience coming straight to New Vegas from Fallout 3. J. Sawyer pushes the game to be much more challenging without being intentionally punishing to the player. While not an official patch, the J. Sawyer mod hoped to give players a bit of insight into the vision that Sawyer had when making New Vegas. The main features of the mod would see the player level cap decreased from 50 to 35, while also increasing the required XP to level by 33%. Carry weight was significantly cut from 150 to 50, base HP was lowered, stimpaks were given a weight, food and drinks were made more rare, and armor was also made to be more than just a fashion choice. All in all, the J. Sawyer mod added a new and challenging experience for those who wish to give it a go. Johnny 5 Aces. New Vegas' Wild Wasteland trait adds a bunch of absurd and out-of-place oddities around the wasteland. It makes the wasteland wild. And while there are well over 24 Wild Wasteland encounters, there is one reference that goes back to Joshua Sawyer's days on the Something Awful forums. Found on a cliff overlooking the Good Spring source is a deceased lookout named Johnny. Near him are 4 balls in a line and 5 aces. The character serves as a reference to the failed game project called Zyborn Clock. Zyborn Clock was a video game proposed in 2003 by some members of the Something Awful forums. It would focus on the concept of time travel and follow a character named Johnny 5 Aces. Because of its odd concept, storyline, and lack of game development experience by the team making it, Zyborn Clock would be mocked into oblivion. And as you or I have yet to play Zyborn Clock, it becomes quite obvious that the game was cancelled. Yet that didn't stop the memes, fan art, and fan fictions of the game and its characters from appearing all over the internet, and in some cases appearing in the video games of a game designer that was known to frequent the Something Awful forums. Gold in Elijah's Head. The main message of New Vegas' Dead Money DLC is this idea of letting go. One way or another, the Courier helps their 3 unexpected companions and the estranged Elder Elijah with cutting ties with the anchors of their past. And in keeping with the themes of letting go, at the very end of the DLC, after completing the Heist of the Century's quest, the player is presented with 37 gold bars. Each bar weighs 35 pounds, totaling 1,295 pounds, much higher than the highest possible carry weight the player can achieve. The expectation is that, in keeping with the idea of letting go, the player will let go of the valuable gold bars of the Sierra Madre, leaving them behind with the memory of the wicked resort. However, some folks have renounced the DLC's message of letting things go, and have found a cheeky workaround to this carry weight problem. In order to bring all the gold bars back to the Mojave, players have stuffed them into the corpse of Elder Elijah. While the Courier's carrying capacity is restricted by carry weight, corpses can hold as many things as possible. So the easiest way to leave the Sierra Madre with all the gold bars is to dismember Elijah's head from his recently deceased body, put all the bars into said head, and use the grab button to carry his gold-stuffed head all the way back to the Mojave. Finding it though, that's not the hard part, it's letting go. Focus. What, more cut content? I thought that was for tier 2. That's right, we're not done with cut content. A Pip-Boy image for an unseen consumable can be found in the game files for New Vegas. It looks like a bottle of glue with the word focus across the front. According to Joshua Sawyer on Tumblr, focus would have decreased the player's field of view, especially when aiming down sights, allowing for the player to see distant enemies better. For one reason or another, focus would not make it into the final version of New Vegas. Hobo Codes. Found on the front of the follower's New Vegas medical clinic is what appears to be an odd-looking stickman. In reality, however, this is no random stickman graffiti, it's actually part of a secretive code that also exists within our own world. These kinds of symbols are called Hobo Codes. You see, the state of the country during the Great Depression left many folks with no choice but to abandon their homes. With nowhere else to go, these people became nomadic hobos, traveling the country in order to find work, shelter, and food wherever they could. After some time, the hobo community developed a sort of communication system, a hobo code. The code primarily consists of basic shapes and images that would be left around. To most, they would appear as random graffiti, but to those in the know, they were valuable pieces of information to those who made a living while on the move. In the case of New Vegas, the stickman on the New Vegas Medical Center means doctor, indicating that you can find medical care there. Now, what's interesting is that while this is the only piece of hobo code graffiti found in New Vegas, the game files actually feature a whole roster of symbols. I don't know, I think it makes for a neat bit of trivia. AMR, NCR, BOS. As the new California Republic became a greater presence in the West, the relationship between the Republic and another notable faction, the Brotherhood of Steel, began to deteriorate. While the Republic and Elder Maxon nurtured respect for one another to the point of the NCR naming a state after the famed name, this didn't last forever. Disagreements about the role of technology within the wasteland led to an all-out war between the factions. It was the better trained and better equipped Brotherhood against the tenacity and manpower of the NCR. And while the conflict between both factions still persists through the events of New Vegas, it would appear that the NCR managed to get a significant advantage in the war. The NCR's success would force the Brotherhood into hiding. But a common question surrounding this conflict is, if the Brotherhood had laser weaponry, power armor, and were trained in combat from birth, how did they lose to a publicly funded, drafted army? Well, the answer might lie in one very specific piece of gear the NCR employs. And that is the Hecate 2 anti-material rifle. The AMR is a powerful long-range rifle that fires the large caliber 50 mg round. As such, it should be no surprise that it has the highest per-shot damage of all New Vegas rifles. I, and many others, believe that the NCR's success against the Brotherhood of Steel is rooted in their usage of the anti-material rifle. I mean, come on, have you seen what one of these things can do to a Deathclaw? Meat of Champions. Meat of Champions is a special perk that's granted to the Courier after they cannibalize 4 influential characters of the Mojave: House, the King, Kaiser, and President Kimball. After acquiring the perk, the player gets +1 to luck, charisma, intelligence, and strength for 60 seconds after they cannibalize any corpse. The perk is explained in lore through the in-game description. The essence of champions flows through your veins. When you cannibalize corpses, you temporarily gain Kaiser's intelligence, Mr. House's luck, the King's charisma, and President Kimball's strength. Now, the funny thing about that description is that in-game, Kaiser has an intelligence of 4, Computer House has a luck of 5, but Husk House has a luck of 10, the King has a charisma of 5, and Kimball has a strength of 5. So outside of the shriveled up version of House, each of these so-called champions have pretty average special stats related to the perk. It's kind of funny. Mole Rat Intelligence. Speaking of Kaiser's intelligence rating, as mentioned, despite being described as an intelligent and charismatic leader, the titular Kaiser of Kaiser's Legion only has a mere intelligence score of 4. Now, in an unrelated note, well, maybe semi-related, there's this 4-legged resident of the mining town of Sloan that would be discovered to have a higher intelligence than the great leader of the Legion. This is Snuffles. She's a tamed mole rat that keeps the quarry workers company during their daily duties. Now, if one examines Snuffles' special stats in the game files, one will see the number 5 next to the mole rat's intelligence score. I'm sure it's just a silly little oversight that has no actual bearing on the in-universe lore of Fallout. Surely a mole rat isn't smarter than Kaiser, right? Mick Ralphs' especially secret inventory. Mick Ralphs is Freeside's premier trinket shop. Whatever you need, they've got at Mick Ralphs. Now, a silver-tongued courier has the chance to convince Mick to show them a special inventory of weapons. Mick will lead the courier to a fake section of the wall, revealing a hidden armory of ballistic weapons. What's interesting about the weapon hanging on the wall is that some of them are actually unobtainable in New Vegas. Hanging on the wall are a railway rifle, a Chinese pistol, and 2 infiltrators. While each of these weapons could be found and used in Fallout 3, they aren't able to be bought at Mick Ralphs or found anywhere else in the Mojave. So while Mick Ralphs does have a secret inventory, it would seem that some things just aren't for sale. Eddie is in Fallout 3. A bit of lore, why don't we? Eddie is a broken down Eyebot found in Prim's Mojave Express. It can be repaired and in doing so becomes a companion of the courier. But how did Eddie even wind up in Prim anyway? Well, to answer that, we need to go to the other side of the country, the capital wasteland. The Duraframe project was an Enclave initiative with the primary goal of developing a durable combat model of their standard Eyebot. Led by Dr. Whitley at Adams Air Force Base in 2275, 2 years before the events of Fallout 3, the project was making steady progress. The Duraframe bots were given armor plating, additional sensors, and a mini Tesla cannon. However, as the Enclave's conflict with the Brotherhood of Steel started to ramp up during the events of Fallout 3, leadership saw the Duraframe project as a waste of time. So Colonel Autumn would order Whitley to stop his work and instead reallocate resources to their Hellfire power armor production instead. Enclave Duraframe Subject E would be Whitley's last remaining Eyebot model. To preserve his work, he would load up Eddie with all the Duraframe data and information and command the bot to head west to the Enclave's Navarro outpost. Eddie would start their journey right away, but before reaching Navarro was shot by a raider. A courier of the Mojave Express would find the decommissioned Eddie and bring them to Johnson Nash. Unable to repair it, Nash would leave Eddie on his front counter. Now, what this all means, the fact that Eddie started their journey after the Enclave and Brotherhood engaged in a regional conflict, is that Eddie must have been in Fallout 3. Well, not physically in the game Fallout 3, but Eddie would have been in the Capital Wasteland during most of the events of Fallout 3. Isn't that cool? Testticles, the Debug Centurion. For those who don't know, a debug mode or menu is a set of tools that game developers can use to alter and test their game. It typically allows for cheats or changes to the game's behavior. In the case of New Vegas, this mode comes in the form of a spawnable NPC. Testticles, the Debug Centurion, is a test cell character found in the files of New Vegas. He serves as a living debug menu NPC that is able to alter the courier's reputation and edit various outcomes for the game's many quests. He is only accessible by using console commands. And come on guys, he's Roman. It's obviously Testticles, not testicles. Don't be calling an old man testicles. That's just not nice. Vault 13 Canteen isn't water. We spoke about the Vault 13 Canteen in a previous tier. It's the canteen that was given out as a pre-order bonus during Fallout New Vegas' release, and has since been bundled in with the New Vegas Ultimate Edition. It's a handy tool, if not slightly annoying with how often one gets notifications about drinking from it. But questions surrounding the trusty canteen have led to one unhinged theory. What if what's in the Vault 13 canteen isn't actually water? I mean, think about it. We're given a never-ending, perpetually refilling canteen that restores more hit points than a bottle of dirty or purified water. The canteen restores 15 HP, but both the purified and dirty water restores 2 HP per second for 5 seconds, totaling 10 HP. Quite a stark difference. And another thing, the tooltip that appears every 5 minutes telling the player that they take a sip from their trusty canteen has no mention that you're taking a sip of water. You're just taking a sip. Taking a sip of what exactly? Well, it just so happens that the preserved meat found in the Old World Blues DLC also heals a total of 15 HP. The effects match. But one might say, Nort, the canteen lowers dehydration and preserved meat restores starvation. They're different. This leads me to my grand hypothesis. The Vault 13 canteen isn't filled with water, but rather a preserved meat smoothie. Yum. No kill is possible. New Vegas's freeform storytelling offers players near limitless ways of playing the game. Many quest lines are optional, few require requisite quests, and while you can fail plenty of quests and make plenty of mistakes, it is always possible to complete the game. One such unique way of playing through New Vegas is the pacifist or no-kill run. It is indeed possible to complete the entirety of the New Vegas story without ever bringing death to any folks who call the Mojave home. Oftentimes, this way of playing may require some workarounds, like luring folks to their demise by dragging hostile creatures to them, or by being a super stealth rat. Either way, the Courier can settle the problems of the Mojave without ever getting blood on their hands. Kill everything is possible. In a similar vein, it's also possible to play through the entirety of New Vegas with the opposite mindset. Instead of refraining from getting blood on your hands, you will bathe in the blood of combatants and innocents alike, tearing the Mojave apart at the very seams. Instead of solving the problems of the Mojave for one of the major powers, you'll leave the Mojave abandoned and lifeless. I will mention that there is one small caveat. Yes Man is unable to be truly killed. Instead, his AI personality will transfer to a fresh Securitron, and all the children in the game are unable to have violence brought upon them. So yes, while the Mojave will be your desolate and empty playground, you may have to put on your dad hat and raise these kids for a few years until they become adults. And then you can make the Mojave truly empty. Yeesh, that got dark fast. And that wraps up Tier 3 of the New Vegas Iceberg. We've hit the halfway point with only 2 more tiers left after this one. Stay tuned for next week, Tier 4, what I have called the Unhinged tier. That's all from me today, folks. If you liked the video, be sure to share and subscribe, join the Discord, have a good rest of your day. Cheers.
So any word on my friends? Were? What do you mean were? Legion bastards. They'll pay for that.